We're at item number 10, resolution adopting an alternative plan in support of a variance request under CDPHE Public Health Order 20-28 for the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. Director Wheeler.
I think we'll kind of fast track this one a little bit more. I'm not going to have much to say because I think I said what I needed to earlier overall, and we'll get started with Lori Seago and then Dr. Johnson, and then we do have some representatives from the zoo that would like to speak. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Lori Seago, Senior Assistant County Attorney. If I can have the overhead, please. I neglected to mention, Commissioners, in the first presentation that each of these alternative plans that you're seeing today have already been vetted through the hospitals, and we've received approval from all 3 hospital systems. So we are very close to be able to being able to submit these either today or tomorrow is my hope. So the red lines that you're going to see on the overhead today were submitted by the hospital systems, and we've passed those through the zoo, and they are in agreement with them. So we'll go through those today as we go through the plan. I've already made Commissioner Vanderwerf's change there up at the top, so we've got that covered. And I do want to also express appreciation zoo leadership, who are the ones that took the initiative to come up with a very robust plan. Most of the content that you see here is what they presented to public health, and it just took a few tweaks and a little bit of reorganization, and we had a plan that we felt comfortable presenting. So what the zoo has proposed is a phased reopening in 3 phases. Phase 1 will be 5 days long, and it will start the day that we get that variance approval. Phase 2 will be 9 days long. That 5 and 9 days, if you notice, comprise that 14-day incubation period for the virus, so that after 2 weeks of a limited reopening, a very limited reopening, we will be able to see how that's worked out before the zoo is able to move on to phase 3, which will occur on the 15th day after opening. In phase 1, the zoo is going to be open to members only as a thank you for those members who provide their annual and other subscriptions to support ongoing operations at the zoo. Timed tickets will be issued, and they will be limited to 300 tickets per hour. When phase 2 starts, it will be open to both members and non-members, so any member of the public will be able to enter the zoo, but time tickets will continue to be used for that 9-day period with a limit of 300 issued per hour. Then once you get to phase 3, that time restriction will no longer apply, so ticketing will be generally available. And the natural limitation that's going to occur here is that the zoo has proposed not utilizing off-site parking shuttles, which is how a great number of people do actually get to the zoo, because parking is limited on the zoo grounds and on the roadways leading up to the zoo. So by not utilizing those shuttles, the natural limitation will be approximately 25% of the zoo's normal capacity, and public health supports that as a sustainable plan. There are certain other restrictions that will occur in those first 2 weeks, phases 1 and 2. They include keeping closed all of those common play areas that are available to the children. There will be a safety officer designated on the grounds whose sole duties will be to patrol and encourage social distancing among the patrons, and also provide guidance and supplies to staff as they implement the measures that they'll be required to utilize. Buildings on zoo grounds will be open at 25% of stated capacity in those first 2 phases, up to a maximum of 50 people with appropriate signage, and then any activity that will cause congestion or numbers over that amount will be managed or closed. Workspaces will be cleaned by staff between shifts. Then in phase 3, building capacity will be increased so long as that 6-foot social distancing measure can be maintained, and will be capped at 50. In coordination with public health, in some instances that cap may be raised to 250 if it can be done safely. Section 2 of the plan address guest procedures. Guests will be encouraged to use online or other no-touch ticketing options. The zoo may offer extended hours in order to distribute attendance over a longer period of time and thin out those numbers a little more. Common touch or reusable items will either not be distributed or will be cleaned between use. And if a staff member has concerns about a guest who is exhibiting or reporting COVID-like symptoms, the staff member will be encouraged to ask that patron to leave for the safety of others. Section 3 covers protective measures that will be implemented by staff and covers items like symptom monitoring, mask usage, and social distancing measures. I don't necessarily want to go through each one of those with you, but please let me know if you have any questions. Section 4 covers other public health practices and includes additional cleaning and disinfection. The Sky Ride at the zoo and the ADA accessible tram will be open following proper cleaning and social distancing guidelines. Rental equipment will be cleaned and disinfected between each use, and signage and other tools will be implemented in order to remind guests of their responsibilities when it comes to keeping everyone safe. The gift shop will be open just as other retail facilities are now allowed to be open. They'll be required to follow those retail requirements. And on-site dining at the zoo will follow the requirements of our restaurant Variance, so they will be allowed to open as well. So just general gathering of people within the zoo will be limited to 10 people and will require physical distancing to be in place between unrelated groups. Weddings and other celebrations are allowed with seating placed at 6-foot distances. All of those gatherings will be limited to 50 people unless in consultation with public health it's determined that a higher number can be permitted if it's done safely. Educational programming, for the most part, will be converted to online offerings when that's possible and practical. There will still be, however, be a limited offering of on-site and in-person programming with advanced registration, social distancing, and group size restrictions. The zoo has proposed a communication plan that to get its message of safe practices out to its guests as robustly as possible. And then the provisions in chapters 9 paragraphs 9 on are those same ones that you will see repeatedly throughout these variances. Recommendations if your facility has been closed for a long period of time, steps to take if an attendee has exhibited or reports symptoms of COVID, and then what will occur if an outbreak does occur and can be tied to the zoo. Does anyone have any questions about those operational guidelines contained in the plan?
Any questions? Commissioner Van der Werf.
Thank you. I just happened to notice it right now. If you go to page 2, it would be paragraph 2G, and that's if a staff member has significant concerns. And let's see if we got it there. There you go, right at the top. But then if you go to paragraph 10, I think that's repeating the same indication. So the question begs if it's really needed in 2 locations, or if maybe paragraph G could be struck because paragraph 10 covers it.
It could be struck, you're right, it is duplicative. I think the intent in including it in 2 places is that paragraph 2 is for guest procedures. So for the public who may be looking for what to expect when they go to the zoo, they can find it easily there. And then paragraph 10 is directed to staff members and the steps that they are to take if they encounter a patron with symptoms. And so it's just for ease of finding it for the interested party who may be looking for those provisions. But you're right, it is duplicative and could be struck if that were desired.
Actually, I appreciate the explanation. I think there is, to your point, since you brought it up, probably the guest procedures section is where guests are more likely to review the document and maybe not cover the rest. So even though it is duplicative, that's probably just fine then. I don't think I have an objection. I just did see it,
Sure.
So I just thought maybe there was just an administrative error of some type.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right,
Great.
thank you. Dr. Johnson?
Yes, thank you. We are excited to be able to present you with this variance as well. The Cheyenne Mountain Zoo presents a very unique setting with multiple exhibits over a 50-acre campus, and by its nature, there's a disbursement of crowds throughout the campus. As Lori spoke to, there are 3 phases that allow for a preliminary thank you for membership partners during this time of shelter at home, and then with the same parameters in place, it opens up to non-members in that phase 2. This creates that 2-week standard incubation period before any substantive change occurs in phase 3. With those touch-free options of payment, extension of hours to allow for additional spread of patrons over time, and disposable maps, et cetera, is available, the zoo is adhering to best public health practices. Buildings are handled under the parameters that match previous variances, with entrances and exits facilitating flow through and out of the building without patron congregation. And there is the 6-foot physical distancing accounted for, as well as the continued hand sanitation, encouragement of masks, surface cleaning, capacity starting at that 75%, and the restrictions in place to increase from that cap of 50 individuals. The extension of those numbers is a new phase that public health would like to begin really addressing as we build our variances, and building on what we have been learning about, building as we review that data, to have some flexibility, as we talked about with the last variance, that there will be some waxing and waning and perhaps a dance with our community in how we are doing this, and this will allow for some flexibility with public health and our partners to be able to address issues as they come up, whether that is to step forward or perhaps to step back for a period of time, and then be able to move forward again. So that flexibility, I think, bodes well of our learning curve in this whole process. As all of the other community data that I presented at the last variance is the same and is mentioned as before. So unless you would like me to repeat it, we'll forego that. It has been a pleasure, again, to work with the zoo staff. They did bring us forward a robust plan already. They have been working with our EPI team in developing protocols for his staff internally, and I think with that ongoing collaboration, there has been a relationship that's been built that will make this something that will move forward fluidly and in partnership, so that due to that relationship, that any issues that do arise will be able to be addressed with our partners in this arena in a timely and responsible manner. And we look forward to the opportunity to move into this next stage together and maybe get to see those new penguins. Do you have any question for me?
Any questions for Dr. Johnson? For me, it's about the hippos.
The hippos.
Yeah, the new African display there.
I know, they look so sweet, but they're actually fairly wicked.
They kill more people in Africa every year than any other animal.
I know. Water buffalo are up there too.
All
If
right.
I may,
Yes, please.
I would like to turn the podium over to Bob Chastain, who is here with the zoo. It's a representative.
All righty. If you could, sir, please state your name and then you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob Chastain, the President and CEO at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. I'd like to start by just thanking you for having me here today. And there's a lot of complaining in this day and age about the local government and the way they work, and the federal government and the way they work. But let me tell you, from my perspective, this has been a shining example of what the government can do when it works together. So I want to thank you for that. I do have a board member here today. Without her, I would not have had the connections, because as human beings, you know, we're social, and she had many of the connections that allowed us to be here today. And then all the way back from the beginning of this, we've been working with the mayor's office, we have been working with El Paso County Health, we have been working with the hospital hospitals, and then finally the county commissioners. And so I just want to say thank you for that example of a fine government system that is working well. I have just a few brief comments because Lori did such a great job. I'm going to cancel the whole first section of my comments because I think she did a good job summing up the plan. But I do want to...
Your variance stands a much greater likelihood of passing as the shorter you make it. No, I'm kidding.
Awesome, thank you. It will be short. I do want to hit a couple comments on why I think we can open safely that weren't made today. The size of our campus would allow us to have a 6x6 spacing around each guest, and as you know, that we're not required to do that. Family groups can be together and would allow us to have 20,000 people. So our attendance will be capped around 4,500, even in the most aggressive part of our plan, because we will not shuttle this year. So I do believe with all the mental health stress and all the physical stress that's going on today, it's time that the city of Colorado Springs get the zoo in the fight to give people a place to be able to distance themselves and go and get that sort of exercise and the mental health relief that they would need. The other thing is I work in an association of zoos and aquariums accredited around the country. There are 59 of those that are open and 30 more that will open. Hopefully, if we open on June 1, we will join that 30 others. That's 26 states. So we've been talking a lot about Colorado being ahead of the curve. My hope is that we could accomplish this so that we can stay ahead of the curve. Otherwise, my fear is that we will start to fall behind. We have a cross-departmental people of over 10 people that have been working on this straight for 3 weeks to make sure that we are ready for opening, and I can tell you that we are ready for opening. There's also a fair amount of precedent for opening because we are essentially a park with animals where, much like a golf course, people move from place to place so that people are not congregating or staying in one area for a very long period of time. We have most of our seating outside, so our restaurants can function mostly like the restaurants are functioning now, and we have dedicated staff on grounds doing the disinfecting so we can deliver on that. In terms of why it's important to the people of Colorado Springs and our community and the state and for our animals, I would just like to say we have become recognized as a global force for conservation. We're regularly listed as one of the top 10 best zoos in the country, recently ranked 4th and 5th and 6th in various polls. We do that without tax support, but clearly we need the support of our local government, and we've seen that they come to our rescue when they need to. Through those people coming in through a program called Quarters for Conservation, we've raised $600,000 a year, every year through Quarters, just a tiny bit of people doing small elements. That $600,000 goes directly into the field to save animals in the wild, including animals that we have as locally as Colorado with the black-footed ferret and the Wyoming toad in Wyoming. As travel is restricted, people are going to be looking for safer places to recreate near home. We're a local favorite. Over 400,000 people come from our local Pikes Peak district here. 126,000 people come from Denver and Pueblo, and about 55,000 people come from other places in Colorado. So we can be a state treasure that will help this economy start moving again. We're regularly asked right now why we are not open, and so we did a survey of over 6,000 people from our database, and 58% said that they would turn within the first month that we were open. And on top of that, they really only wanted two things from us. One, they wanted to see us disinfecting more regularly, and they wanted to see hand sanitizer, and we can do that. And then nearing the close here, we just completed a $20 million hippo and penguin project that you were just talking about. You might not know that the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo is unique and that only about 37 zoos in the country have hippos, and Colorado Springs is lucky to be able to have that. But I want to close with this quick story about why deep down the staff and I, besides our conservation work, why we believe we're important to the community. And it's for people like Amber and Grace. I met a mom and a little girl a few years ago. They were riding our carousel, which will now be closed because of this. But a staff member called me because they had such an interesting story, and I went and tracked them down. This mother, Amber, was doing the difficult job of raising a family while her husband was deployed fighting for our freedom human safety. And Grace's dad is a major in the Army here at Fort Carson, where he runs the operations for his units. One of their daughters, Grace, though, has had some health challenges, and the zoo has been an important part of her therapy over the years. Amber, the mother, has kept in contact with me over the last few years, but their time in Fort Carson is now done. And here's a small clip from a recent email that they sent me. It says, "We are headed to Fort Meade, Maryland in a couple of weeks, and Grace wanted to make sure that you knew a couple of things. She said you need to save money for a cheetah exhibit, laugh out loud. And she said, since you don't have a giving box for future cheetahs, she would just have to put her allowance in the donation box for penguins and hippos. Since meeting you all, at the zoo, she has been a snake for Halloween as well as a leopard, and she basically lives like an animal on her bad days, from snow leopards to servals to red foxes to wolves and in between. She prays for Penny and Masicho, two giraffes of ours that just recently passed away, and in particular she prays for the otters because they apparently need prayers too. Thank you for making our lives a little easier, and thank you for enriching the lives of our children." And if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I have, she just recently gave me a dollar bill from her allowance. I'd like to leave that for you. She wants it to go to hippos and penguins, but the way you can really help hippos and penguins is vote to let us open. So thank you. That's there for you, should you take that.
You got it, thanks. Yeah. Maybe we can, put some tokens in to support our favorite animal with that dollar. Anybody else for the presentation? Doesn't look like it. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this variance? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it up here for deliberation and a vote. I think this is singularly focused, and if my geography is correct, this is in Commissioner District 3.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is in District 3. We all know just what a beautiful zoo this has been for the community. I am just thrilled that we have this alternative opening plan presented to us. And, it is a special place. It's my understanding that it might be I think it's the only private zoo, only private mountain zoo in the entire United States. There's some very, very unique things about this place. And I just think also, because it's a venue that's outdoors and has a capacity for holding a lot of people, in this plan, there's a limit about that. I think that is good, but opening the zoo actually gives people an opportunity to get outdoors, get them perhaps out of a more constrained urban environment. There's real benefits, in my humble opinion, about proceeding forward with this. And I am thrilled that we have this presented for us today. With that in mind, if the chair is so inclined, I would like to make a motion.
Please.
Okay. I would like to move to approve this resolution adopting an alternative opening plan in support of a variance request under CDPHE, Public Health Order 20-28 for the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo.
Commissioner Brimmer.
Second.
All right. Any other discussion, Commissioner Brimmer?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I made my earlier comments about collaboration, and those hold true with this variance request as well. And I wanted to thank the zoo and their board members for coming forward with a very thoughtful plan and for sharing Grace's story. Many of you may know that I have a 5-year-old, a zoo-loving 5-year-old, who has some health issues and challenges himself. And several years ago, when we first started being out of our homes a little bit, out of our bubble that we needed to keep him in for a while, the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo was one of the first places we took him. And it was because it was a large open area. We felt very like we could protect him there and also provide him with the stimulation and a little bit of a learning environment that he needed at that time too. And so I value this, and I see incredible value in having this, the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, be one of the earliest options open here. And I think our public health staff referenced the mental health aspects of doing this as well. So I'm very excited, and I have a 5-year-old who was very excited when I said that I have the opportunity to perhaps see if we could open the zoo today. And he said, "Oh, does a commissioner do that?" I said, "Well, not normally, but I am honored that we have the opportunity to be part of the team that can help get the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo reopen." And so I proudly second this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Williams?
I am just happy to vote for this motion, excited for our community to be able to get out again and enjoy the animals. I think it's great.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too love the zoo. I cheetahs that out there, and I look forward to getting to assist and go to the zoo after they do open. I continue to push for the reopening of El Paso County and our businesses, as we all do, and I appreciate all great support I think is being done by commissioners and staff, and we'll continue to do that. I did state last week, however, publicly and in interviews that I would be taking an abstaining vote, albeit a small gesture, to bring attention to my belief of the governor's executive overreach on certain mandates, particularly his one-man suspension of election law executive orders. So I will be doing that today on this vote with no disrespect and apologies to the zoo and representatives who I respect and are great partners and who I support. Again, I appreciate all the great work and the great work done by our commissioners and staff on reopening our businesses and our efforts to continue that and support our community and county. So God bless and thank you to the zoo.
I'm going to be supportive of this, very supportive of this variance. Sometimes governing's hard, and sometimes, I don't like what the governor does. I don't like what other folks in different levels of government do. We've been given this process. It's not a great process. It's been a very cumbersome process, and it's been something that has frustrated all of us on occasion. But it's the process we have, and if we don't vote for this today, that means the zoo does not open. We could stand on our principles and say that this is just about acting in defiance to the governor, but here's what that means. That means nobody gets to go to the zoo. That means that they don't get to open. They don't get to be able to have the community, just the necessary distraction for the community that we need right now. So I think it very appropriate to continue supporting these variances, and I'm going to do that as we move forward. As I said earlier, it's a snowball rolling down the hill, and I hope it gets bigger and rolls faster and faster and faster as we go and we open more and more and more stuff up. I wish we didn't have to go through this variance process, but it's the process we've got, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we're doing what we need to do to get all businesses open, to get gyms opened in addition to what we've done thus far. So I'm going to proudly support this and be pleased to engage in the leadership role of making sure we're doing what we can do to get our all of our businesses, not just the zoo, open and moving forward. With that, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Abstain.
And I vote aye. That passes 4-0 with Commissioner Gonzalez, the Vice Chair, abstaining. Congratulations.